You know how thankful I am. Thank you for the download, for the stream, hopefully for the subscription to this show, Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast. We keep strong and keep getting stronger because of the support from you guys. And what you guys can do to continue to support Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast is, number one, if you haven't subscribed already, please do. We're on Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, all over the place, Google Play, wherever you get podcasts from. We're there. We're also posted on YouTube and notsam.com every week. But subscribe to the show wherever you can, and be sure to go over to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating and write a little review about how much you like the show, because it helps us more than you could possibly ever know, and it costs you absolutely nothing. We have a very busy show. I'm confident about this one. If you weren't sure if you were going to write a good review, then go ahead, listen to this week's episode, then write your review. Let's start this week's episode.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast. Introducing your host from New York, here is Sam Roberts.
Happy 2018! The future is upon us. Welcome to Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast. It's the first episode of 2018, one of what will be at least 52 episodes in this year of 2018. Thank you all for being a part of the show again. I was really happy with how 2017 turned out. I always love doing those year in review podcasts, especially with a guy like Wade Keller. He makes it really easy, and really appreciate it. Wade sent me a screenshot of how the show was doing on the iTunes rankings about midweek, and I don't always look at that stuff, but you guys were really supportive of the show with Wade last week, so I can't tell you how much I appreciate when you guys do stuff like that. Of course, I've started posting full podcasts in their audio form over on the YouTube page, youtube.com/notsam. So if that's an easier way for you to listen to these shows, especially in long form, then go right ahead, go over there and listen to them there. If YouTube is just a place where you like to go to get videos, then you can watch videos of so many of the interviews that we do. One that was just posted was one that I teased last week. I told you it would be ready for 2018, and it is. My interview with Bobby Roode, now up on the YouTube page. You can see for yourselves the moment when Rusev interviewed us to say, "I'm all the way up." And if you look really closely, you can make out the body of the most charismatic Bulgarian in all of WWE, the man who created Rusev Day. Rusev! You can see him behind the curtain. It's actually really funny. So check that out over on the YouTube page. You can also check out some of the other stuff that I'm doing over there, like Sam Roberts Now, which is the show that we do when we want to do it. And by we, I mean I. Out of the Not Sam studio. It's just kind of a general interest show, not really a wrestling show. But check it out if that's something that you're interested in. A bunch to talk about this week. Timing is a little weird. I didn't want to delay the show at all and put it out a day later because, you know, I would have liked to have seen Wrestle Kingdom before this show comes out and give you my thoughts on it. However, as of this recording, Wrestle Kingdom hasn't happened yet, and by the time Wrestle Kingdom is over, this show will already be out. So maybe, and you tell me, you tweet me after Wrestle Kingdom, and you tell me if I need to turn on the Not Sam Studios and do a bonus State of Wrestling show just based on Wrestle Kingdom after Wrestle Kingdom. Don't bother telling me before you watch it. But once you watch it, if you think I need to make an addendum to this week's episode, then let me know. Tweet me at NotSam and Facebook message me at NotSam. Do the whole deal. This week on the show, we, of course, will go over what I believe are the top 5 stories in the world of pro wrestling over in the State of Wrestling. I want to talk about in the bridge segment, so right after this interview. Don't skip any of it, because I want to talk about one of a big change happening in the world of wrestling podcasts. It's not this podcast that's changing, but one of the other big ones is changing formats, and I think it's newsworthy enough that we should be covering it here on Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast, so we will. That'll be in the bridge segment, but before we get to the bridge is there to bring us from this place to the State of Wrestling. What's this place, you ask? Our interview segment. I personally felt like we did a lot of great interviews in 2017. I heard from a lot of you guys that had a lot of different opinions on who your favorite guests were. But I think that Pete Gas surprised a lot of people last year. And I think it kind of started, and I don't want to pat myself on the back too much, but I think a lot of that started here on Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast, and then built. This was really the first wrestling podcast he had done, to my knowledge. And then it started to build throughout the year as interest in his book picked up, and he started jumping on other podcasts. And I loved it. I was so happy to see it because he's one of those guys whose name probably gets lost in the shuffle too often for as much as he did and as much as he's got to say that's entertaining. So I decided to invite Pete Gas back into the Not Sam studio for a revisit, to touch on a lot of stuff that we had not yet touched on in that first interview that we did several months ago. So this is less of a, tell me your history, because we went through all that. If you want to hear the other Pete Gas interview, that's available in the archives of this podcast or on the YouTube channel. You can watch the video. Right now, I want to talk to Pete Gas about just some of the stories that we didn't get to last time, some of the stories that went down during his prime in the WWE, during the WWF Attitude Era. I want to talk about his thoughts on Shane McMahon and whether it will be Shane McMahon and Daniel Bryan wrestling again, and we'll talk about that in the State of Wrestling as well, but I think Pete Gas is a cool guy to talk to about that because the guy knows Shane. So, this week, Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast proudly presents my guest from the Mean Street Posse, straight. And before I get to it, don't forget to pick up his book. Pete Gas has an amazing book out right now. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it anywhere books are sold. And it's just about, it's straight to the wrestling. It's just about his journey in the WWE. And it really is an amazing read. So check it out. And if you don't believe me, listen to this interview. My guest this week from the Mean Street Posse, all the way from the mean streets of Greenwich in to the Not Sam studio. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Pete Gas.
And now, the Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast interview.
Well, this is incredible and only fitting. I was thinking about it, and I was thinking about my favorite interviews that I've done, I guess recently. Was the first interview we did, that was in 2017, right? Or was that?
It was.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about my favorite things we did in 2017, or I did. And your interview, the Pete Gas interview from Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast, popped in my head for a couple reasons. I think because the feedback that I got on it was the same as me, and I think the same that you kind of had, where it was like we didn't really know what it was going to be until we started talking, and it turned into I think people underestimate how many great stories are just in your head, and I don't think people realize, they're like, oh, Pete Gas, I hadn't really thought about that, and then they listen to the interview. And so, I think because it was a surprise and it ended up just being a great interview that I thought about it, and also because I feel like after we talked, you were like, oh, that was fun, and started putting, the olive branches out to some other shows, and I was super happy, because I feel like after you did this podcast, there was this whole resurgence of
no doubt,
of Pete Gas, nostalgia in 2017, which I thought was great. So I thought the first interview for 2018 should be Pete Gas. So welcome, buddy.
Thank you very much.
Welcome. Am I right though? Did you feel like in the last year there was this kind of burst, which is everything you want when you're putting out a book,
right?
This burst of Pete Gas nostalgia.
Oh, no question. I mean, this show is so popular, and it's a credit to you.
Well, I mean,
I'll put you over a little bit.
I'm not the one coming in here with stories.
Over.
Yeah,
I've been doing that for years. But it was. We got a lot of feedback. A lot of positive feedback, which was phenomenal. I mean, that was. You heard it on social media because they tagged both of us on it, and it was great. And
then I love seeing all the positive feedback you're getting all over the place. You did X-Pac show.
Yep.
You did Edge and Christian show.
Yep.
Is it amazing to you that podcasts, I think, have made it, because we talked about this the first time you were on, that you and I met years and years and years ago.
Yeah.
And so I feel a little bit of it, but even more so with you going on shows like X-Pac show and Edge and Christian show, that the podcast world has made it so that these guys that you were cool with back then that maybe you'd never talk to again, now you've got this great excuse to kind of sit down and talk to them for like an hour about wrestling that you wouldn't have had otherwise.
Well, yeah, I mean, I get to see those guys when I do signings for my book, and we do, appearances and stuff. And then Edge and Christian had me on their show.
Yeah. On the WWE Network show.
Yep.
Yeah.
Totally reeked of awesomeness. Hopefully there'll be another season someday. And but yeah, it was just to get to see those guys, and then they know the story behind what Rodney and I had to go through and everything, and they know there's a story out there.
Yeah,
and that was the best part. Just you get to go to those signings and you see these guys that you hadn't seen in a while. It's like a class reunion. Yeah. And to be honest with you, I would probably do it for a lot less money, just to get to see those guys again. And, like you go to WrestleMania, you that week you see guys at WrestleCon or, at the shows or wherever you go, your hotel lobbies or whatever. And that's always so much fun,
So have you found that, like, because obviously generations change, and it's like now whenever you go backstage at a show, there's going to be less and less faces that right? Because, stuff changes. But I feel like this generation that is there in WWE right now all grew up fans during the Attitude Era. So have you been approached by guys that, like, you might not, that you didn't work with that are really sitting there going, like, dude, P.K.S., I grew up with.
Like New Day.
Really?
Oh. Like Xavier Woods. We were in Dallas when we went to see Shane wrestle Taker. And we went to the after party. And Xavier Woods, he popped when he saw me. And, he was hanging out with Jericho, so I went over to say hi to, just to go see Jericho and everything. But then Xavier, I'm a fan of the New Day.
Right.
And, to have them feel the same way about the Mean Street Posse was awesome. I mean, it just, that's really cool.
And it's and you realize that maybe the Mean Street Posse had some influence over that, right? Because New Day obviously is operating as themselves. Like, a lot of what they do, they're just doing what they do as people heightened. So you have to believe that if they grew up as Mean Street Posse fans, some of the entertainment aspect of what the Mean Street Posse was is going into the entertainment aspect of what the New Day is, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, you look back, and for them to go and make that, come back and say something to me about how much they enjoyed it. Yeah. And then, obviously I'm saying the same to them. So it was like, it's pretty flattering.
Yeah. Yeah. So you are, what do you think, before we get into you?
Okay.
My theory going in right now, because you still watch pretty regularly, right?
Yeah, every week.
Right.
Yeah.
So as much as WWE and everybody says that Daniel Bryan is not coming back, I really firmly believe that in 2018, Shane and Bryan are going to have a match.
Don't you want that, though?
Of course. And I almost feel, man, that's probably why, right? Like, because they're making us so hungry for it. I'm like, there's no way they'd be making me this hungry for it only to disappoint me.
Two stiff guys.
Like, we know from the last show that you have no idea, because all Shane does is kayfabe you anyway.
Oh, he does. Absolutely.
He didn't tell you when he was returning.
And he wouldn't tell me.
No, he wouldn't.
No.
Do you think that we're going to see that match in WWE? As a fan, I'm asking you, not as like
as a well-educated fan, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're going to see it.
You do.
I do think.
You think that we will see, and it'll be in a WWE ring.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
because they say, I guess Shane, but they say that Daniel has said, like, I'm going to come back to wrestling. Hey, Lila.
Yeah.
Brian said he's coming back to wrestle. If it's not in WWE, it'll be somewhere else. That's kind of been his line for like a year now. Which is, but I'm sitting there going, even that line leads me to believe that WWE is going, that's not happening.
He's not going to wrestle Shane if it's not in the WWE ring.
Right. That's true. Yeah. So. Yeah. But you'd be excited about seeing that?
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, I've known Daniel since he was 19 years old.
Where'd you meet him?
So when we got sent to Memphis, we were there for about a month or so, and then 4 guys from Shawn Michaels' school came in, and it was Daniel Bryan,
right,
Lance Cade, Brian Kendrick, and then another guy, Shooter Schultz, he was really good too. And the 4 of them were taught by Shawn to be stiff.
Really?
Oh yeah, and they were told, make sure you. Dog's fine.
No, I know. Lila's just you're sitting there trying to tell your stories, and Lila Garrity.
I can do 2 things.
You're right.
But anyway, yeah, they were told. Shawn taught them, no matter how much your opponent bitches and moans, continue to be stiff. You can just
give him some of that SummerSlam '96 stomp on Vader's face stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And he was adamant about it. And sure enough, they always were. And I remember when these 4 guys showed up, I remember working Daniel. He was American Dragon.
Right. Was he wearing the mask?
And the mask and everything.
With the blue and red mask or something? Yeah.
Yeah. And and those guys were like way advanced. They came out of that school. They were home, 18, 19 years old, and they were, like when we were watching sports or going out with our girlfriends, whatever, they were home watching Japanese wrestling, like tapes.
Tape traders,
Oh, yeah. Constantly. That they lived and breathed the sport.
Yeah.
So they were...
and they looked at it as a sport, not like as in, like, this is entertainment that we get drunk and watch. Like, it's a sport.
And then they would see a move, and then they would be, like, doing it to each other, like, in the living room of their home.
Right.
Where their apartment where they were staying.
Right.
And, it was... it's pretty cool. We had a nice group down there in Memphis.
Did you? So when you start interacting with stuff like that, because we talked last time about how guys were stiff with you, but you would almost welcome it. You were such a person who respected the business.
Yeah.
That you welcomed being hit hard because you wanted to show the guys that you respected it, that you were taking it seriously, and
Absolutely.
At any point, did you decide, well, I need to start working stiff so people know I'm not just Mean Street Posse, Shane's friend, Pete Gas, I'm an actual worker?
If I got a potato, you have to give a receipt. Because if you don't give a receipt, then you're going to get taken advantage. You're going to get eaten up in the ring constantly.
Did you know that right away, or did it take a couple of times before?
It was kind of a combination of both.
Right.
I kind of knew about it, but I didn't know when to pull the trigger on it. And then
because you say that, right? But if you're a rookie and JBL is laying into you, you might not even be taking JBL. That might not really be JBL laying into you. It just hurts. You start swinging back early.
Right.
And you're not, now it's all of a sudden, whoa, the attitude on this kid.
Well, that's a funny thing. So I have a good story about that. I did a signing over the summertime down in New Jersey. And it was myself, Kevin Thorne, and Bob Holly. And I thought I love this story. I actually get, you can see the goosebumps.
I see him. There's goosebumps. Yeah.
I get so fired up. I get so passionate about this stuff. So we did the signing. I go to leave. I put the books I didn't sell in the car. I came back to...
Only a very few, by the way.
Only a few.
That's right.
I go back in and to say my goodbyes. And as I'm walking away, Bob grabs my wrist. And he goes, I want to talk to you. So I said, yeah, Bob, what's up? And he goes, I want to tell you something. Can I swear?
Sure.
All right. He goes, you are one tough son of a bitch. And I just laughed. I thought it was funny. And he goes, I said, why? He said, I don't know if you know this. He goes, but we used to talk about you and Rodney when you guys weren't around in the locker room. And we used to see who could break you guys.
So these conversations actually happening. It's not even it's like this sort of in the back of my mind. Oh yeah, I guess I was trying to break you. It was tonight we're gonna try to break the posse again.
Yeah, they saw who was on the card, and so it was Bob Holly, and he said, he goes, we used to see who could break you guys, who would make you guys bitch and moan, literally start a fist fight, whatever the case was, and he said, Pete, he goes, we went out to the ring, and he goes, I hit you with everything I had. I swear to God, he said this. If you ever have him on, you got to ask him.
I will.
So he said, I hit you with so many things, and he goes, I was hitting you for real. He goes, we get backstage. He goes, you're smiling, you're laughing. And he goes, I couldn't break you.
Yeah.
And he goes, then I got to go in the locker room, and I got to get my balls busted by JBL because I
couldn't get it done.
Yeah, and it was going, and it was in the guys. It was Benoit. It was JBL, obviously. Holly.
Yeah.
There was a whole crew of guys that used to literally try to break us and just see what we could do, just to see how we were. But he said to me, he goes, that day, he goes, you totally earned my respect. He goes, because I hit you with everything I could. He goes, and you just said, you came back laughing, big smiling, thanking me.
So what's the difference then between taking punishment and earning respect versus taking punishment and being okay, we can pound on this kid all we want? Because there's two different ways that ends up. You take everything Bob Holly's got, and either it's going to be okay, this kid's tough, or it's going to be, okay, this is our punching bag now. right?
The difference, I think, is that I didn't like. I liked it.
You're not complaining about it. You didn't come back like, oh.
If you show any, and I said this. Thank you, because you just reminded me part of it. He goes, I said to Bob, Bob, truth is, it didn't hurt. I'm being honest. Not that I'm downplaying what you do.
Right.
I said, but I grew up with 2 older brothers, and they used to beat the hell out of me.
They did.
Oh yeah. and if I said something, they would do it more.
Right.
And I learned at a young age, if you bitch and moan, or if you go tattle on them, or whatever, you're only going to get your ass kicked more.
You know, it's really interesting because this has been a philosophy of mine, and I've actually tried to explain the premise to people outside of wrestling completely, like just as a life philosophy. I feel like in any business, I feel like it would probably work in prison. I feel like wherever you go,
right.
The idea of baby facing and no selling
right.
is all you need in life.
Right.
Like I feel like what you're talking about right now is sold, not by not. No, I'm not talking about in the ring.
Right.
I'm talking about when you get back, sell by not complaining, not looking pained, and then you babyface by still being Bob Holly's friend after all this.
Saying thank you.
And if you do those 2 things in anywhere in life,
right.
wrestling or otherwise, I feel like you'll probably succeed.
Right. So when I was in the early '90s. I was a mailman, which was funny because I was a mailman on Edge and Christian's show. So I knew how to do it.
Which, by the way, had you actually gone to the WWE under conventional standards,
right,
you would have been the mailman.
The mailman.
Right. That's how it would have gone.
So when I was a mailman, I know why people go postal.
Mm-hmm.
There's a total reason why people go postal.
Why?
Because it's the same crap every day. You're sorting your mail, and those guys in there, they find the weak link, and they just break the guy's balls. In the post office.
Post office. That's great.
I've seen it.
You know, and it's amazing because everybody goes like, oh, bullying and wrestling, and this has to stop. Right. And you're here to say it's everywhere. It's the post office.
And I said there was one guy, like every day he was pulling one of the guys in to meet with the postmaster and the shop union guy and all that. And he would complain, and finally one day, because like I said, I understood from being a kid getting my ass kicked. I said, if you don't show that it bothers you, they're gonna leave you alone.
Right.
And he didn't get it. And he got his balls busted.
He just wouldn't believe
Those are the guys that come back with guns and shoot everybody.
Right.
And that was.
And it's like you want to tell him, like, we fuck with everybody. If you would just calm down from the beginning. Right. We wouldn't have kept pushing until you came in here with a gun.
So no offense to any of the mailmen out there.
Right.
But I know what you're going through, and I understand how it works, and it's monotonous, man. It really is. It's brutal.
Well, that's one of that's where it happens, right? When you're on one of those tracks, they're just monotonous, and it's the same thing every day. Mm-hmm. Some personality types, the only thing that you have to keep you from going insane,
right,
is to just bust balls, right? Because otherwise, it's the same thing every day. You need some kind of emotion, to be shown, and it's got to be somebody else's frustration, maybe.
Yep. And I would just sit there, I'd put my mail, I'd listen and just laugh.
Right. It's a show for you.
As simple as what station the radio was on, and they would just give the guy grief.
But every time he'd be like, "What do you mean?"
Unbelievable.
It'd be great. That's so funny. So, when did you start? Was there ever an issue where you're like, I gotta swing back here. I gotta hit back, because obviously in that scenario with Holly, you didn't hit back hard, or did you?
Yeah, I mean we got our licks in. And at WrestleMania 2000,
that was the multi-person hardcore match, right? Yeah,
right. And there, everyone was beating everybody
for real.
Yeah, and before when we first were going over the match and who was doing what and what spots, I remember JBL was like, "Listen, guys, this is WrestleMania." He goes, "Lay it in." He goes, "Say your sorries backstage afterwards," and we did. I mean, we were swinging things at each other. And there was no joke.
Well, it's one of those things, too, in a multi-person hardcore match like that where you've got limited time, you got multiple pinfalls, it's real easy for that not to be taken seriously. Yeah. If you don't lay that in, then it's just like a sideshow grown men playing, right? You've got to do something to make people believe there's some kind of threat of danger.
And to be honest with you, I guarantee I had a concussion. I had crimson mask. I had blood pouring from my head because Viscera hit me with one of those box fans. And he tore my head. That box fan, I don't know who put that thing in. But it tore me open. Crash Holly. I want to say Thrasher. I forgot who. There was. I wanted to say there was at least 3 or 4 guys that thing busted open. But Viscera hit me. I remember going down, and I'm on the canvas. And if you go back and watch, after Viscera hits me, you could see a hand reach over and point at me. And I remember feeling this, I thought it was sweat coming down, right down my face. And the guy in the front row who's pointing says, "Pete Gas is bleeding." So now I look down, because I'm on my stomach. I look down, and about the size of this thing, about 6 inches in diameter, I had a puddle of blood.
Do you start freaking out the first time that happens?
Hell no.
You don't? Because you're all adrenaline up.
Fine.
Yeah.
So what I did was, I tried pushing more out.
That's so yes.
Because you got to get the effect.
Of course.
Right? So
what's the point of bleeding if it doesn't look good on TV?
You got to get the juice.
Yeah, yes.
So if it's there, I got it the hard way. I got to keep going with it. So I literally try to push it as much out as I could.
Yeah, because I guess even if you weren't supposed to blade, you're not going to get in trouble for blading. You got hit in the head with a box fan. This stuff happens.
So I'm pushing that thing out, and then we just kept going. But I remember the blood was in my eyes, and the fight went into the back. And then Rodney won the belt. Joey Abs beat Rodney. Thrasher beat Joey Abs. I remember that was my spot. I was coming back out to beat Thrasher, and I was going to spray him with the fire extinguisher, but I couldn't see, and I couldn't tell if it was Mosh or Thrasher that went by me.
Just a guy in a skirt. I don't know who it is.
So I said, oh, man. If you listen close as we're going through the curtain to go back out to the crowd, I said, "Is this it?" Because I couldn't see. I couldn't see. Then when we get out there, I'm like trying to get the blood out of my eyes. We get over, and I see the fire extinguisher, and then I'm like, "Oh, watch, this thing's not gonna work." I'm thinking in my head, like,
Yeah.
So I get the pin out, and I sprayed him, and I hit him over the head with it, and it was great because as I hit him over the head, it sprayed again.
Right.
And all of a sudden, I go for the cover, and then reality hit. You're at WrestleMania, and you're about to lose the belt, but you won the belt.
You just won it.
So Timmy White grabs my wrist, and I let out this, like, it just hit me all at once as he's raising my hand. I was like, "That's awesome, man."
Yeah.
No one will ever take that from me.
So you just go, yeah, like
I came back and just screamed, and then all of a sudden Taz hits me.
But you had your moment, though.
I had my moment.
That was the one. That one moment.
No one will ever take that from me.
You won a championship as you're just bleeding.
Good juice.
Yeah.
Juice.
That's so funny. But I mean, I always looked at those matches. Like, those matches must be more difficult than even like when I was a kid and I first started, kind of figuring out how wrestling sort of works. You think you know how it works when you're a kid, and you're totally wrong. Right. But when you realize, like, okay, there's some choreography going on here. I would look at, like, big battle royals and just be dumbfounded at, like, how people remembered, like, he goes out there and went and blah, blah, blah. But I think back now on those hardcore matches and, like, what you're describing to me, and I can't believe, because obviously, like you said, there's a plan in action here. It's not just, like, we're randomly passing the thing around. Like, this person wins, and then this person wins, and then this person wins, and everybody's kind of got to remember their spots while they're getting hit in the head with box fans by Viscera.
Right.
That's like...
And in between, it's like you're just ad-libbing all the other stuff in between. You're just
right, but keeping one eye on what's going on over here so I know what point in the match I'm at.
Right.
Like, that's got to be...
Cool.
But...
Cool. And at Mania.
Mania.
Right.
Like, that's that. So at that point, does your adrenaline just fully take over your entire body, meaning, like, I'm not even, like...
When doesn't it?
That's it.
When you're out there, no matter what.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter. Nothing hurts.
So does that mean that in terms of the actual art of wrestling and figuring out, like, how to perform your moves, when to perform your moves, when the finish is coming, like the pacing of the whole thing, does that kind of just become muscle memory? Because it's just like adrenaline and I know how to do this and let's just go.
Yeah, and then you get to the Triple H Taker level.
Right.
Which is...
Dude.
You have no idea. Like, you talk about goosebumps.
Yeah. I can't even imagine that, especially Triple H Taker level. Like, put in your head, 3/4 of the way in, these guys know they're having one of the best matches of all time.
Right.
Like, in my head, I'd be so worried about screwing it up in the last quarter of the match. But I guess that's why those guys are who those guys are,
absolutely.
Right?
I mean, and I know that, Taker would allow the feel of the crowd, and he would base that on what they were doing next, and Taker would call everything out and certain spots they had, planned. But everything else was feel from Taker on the crowd, on how to get the crowd on that roller coaster ride of getting up and down.
You just follow him.
Yeah, and then with Triple H, I mean, that's one of the things I've really always wanted. It was to just be able to work with him at some point. I mean, we worked with him, but never against him.
Right.
And I've always heard some of the greatest compliments about him. You marvel at what type of worker he is. And for people, I mean, they have no idea. They said he is the easiest person to work, and it looks like you're in a drag-out brawl.
Is that a frustrating thing, like, inside of wrestling, to have a skill set, like, for instance, like we're talking about with Triple H, where the average fan really, like, we all know that Triple H is good, but there are certain skill sets that the average fan has zero appreciation for because because if you haven't been in the ring, you can't possibly know that or know how important it is. Is that do you think that that's a frustrating thing, or is that just like, no, this part of it is my peers know that I have this, so
I think it's more important that peers.
Yeah, that's what that part's about.
Yeah, because I mean, he's doing his job. I mean, what he's doing for work. I mean, he's heads and he's just way above everybody else.
Yeah,
and like one of the signings I did recently, Maven. Mm-hmm. He and I got to talking a lot, and
which is probably, you guys probably have a lot in common in terms of how you came in.
Yeah.
Because it was both like, you both came in probably the worst way humanly possible in terms of being accepted by the locker room, right?
I think ours was a lot worse than
even worse than Tough Enough.
I mean, yeah. I
mean,
at least he earned it.
Right.
I mean, we were there. We got an opportunity. We made the most of that opportunity.
Right.
And if we didn't, we would have been gone after a couple of weeks. But
you were I guess that's true. I mean, he came from a reality show, but at least he won it. Like, you were just Shane's friends.
Right. And it was something that we were, we got an opportunity through Shane, but because of the reaction of the crowd, and then eventually the hard work, that's what kept us around.
Right.
And I think the ratings against Briscoe and Patterson being the highest
rated.
Right.
That's what we're talking about.
I think that's what kept us there.
So what were you saying about Maven?
So Maven and I were talking about just the business in general and life and work and stuff, and Triple H came up and he was talking about, and he raved, and like you're listening, and the people at home are watching this or listening to it, and they're interested because of the content. That's how I was. I mean, I was like literally at the edge of my seat, talking to him.
Just tell me what it's like working with Triple H.
And he just said how they did a match and how it went. He actually said, I went back and watched it. It was a Monday Night Raw match, and they went on for a good amount of time. I don't remember the exact time. And he said he never got winded, and how they worked, and he knew, like, Triple H knew when to turn it on and when to back, to down, throttle down, and he, they never blew up and got tired and stuff. And
so Triple H, not only in his own conditioning, but he actually knew how to pace the match, so that nobody involved got blown up.
Right.
That's next level.
That's the level.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's just, you go.
It's one thing to watch a guy not get blown up. It's another thing for a guy to know how to not let his opponent get blown up.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's crazy.
No doubt. I mean, we got to work with him and interacted with him. Like, he called me a buckethead once. It's on TV. I think it's funny. I laugh every time. Anytime that video comes across, someone sends it to me or something, I laugh every single time because I think it's just funny.
And when he says that,
I have a buckethead.
And that gets ad-libbed when he's on TV?
Yeah.
So when he says that, do you have to bite your tongue so you're not laughing?
And then as soon as it's like cut, I just start laughing, But I have a bucket head. I understand that.
Yeah.
Easy.
It's just no. I'm just agreeing with Triple H, right? He's a genius. That's all. That's all I'm saying. Yeah, genius. That's all. So how long did it take? Well, no, that's what I was going to ask you. How did the Undertaker take to the posse?
Good. I mean, he's looked at as a god there,
right?
He was,
because I in my head, and again, and you're here to correct me because I'm just making this up, but you've got you guys you were talking about a minute ago, which is JBL and Bob Holly and Benoit, and those guys are here, and I feel like over them is kind of the overseer, and that's the Undertaker.
Yeah.
Right.
He's the daddy.
Right.
Yeah, he's the big dog.
Right.
You know, it's his yard.
And so
no matter what you say.
Do you go in there and being like, okay, I'm getting a feel for what this is like? Does Shane smarten you guys up to what politics in the locker room are? Like, hey, stay away from this guy you should know, or he just goes like, sink or swim?
Somewhat sink or swim.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we had to, we knew just from knowing Shane and knowing the business kind of before we got in, you got there, you shake everyone's hand. There's certain rules, and, you shake everyone's hand when you get there, you shake everyone's hand when you leave. And that's the way I don't know what it's like now, but that's the way it is. That's the way it was back then, old school. And that respect thing, you show it, or you're not gonna last too long,
right?
But yeah, we just as far as Taker goes, I mean, he was always there. He was always helpful. I played dominoes. It was the Godfather and I versus Undertaker and Kane, and then Rikishi and Prince Albert. They were a team, and we would just play for hours.
Really?
After lunch.
You got to play dominoes with that crew.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So it started by me watching. Because I was always, I always loved numbers and dominoes and stuff like that. So I used to always watch, and then I filled in because someone had to go do a pre-tape, and they needed someone to stand in, and I filled in as Godfather's partner. And then I became like I was the guy that was designated to go to hold the dominoes, which I still have the same pair of dominoes, the same set. Right?
Yeah, of course.
And I still have them. They were Godfathers, and I have them, and every time I see them, I kind of smile.
I mean, that's one of those amazing things because, just because that's what you kind of as folklore, goes through what it goes through. You're like, that's the Undertaker and his crew, and they like playing dominoes. I don't think that anybody up until right now would have assumed that Pete Gas was one of the dominoes guys hanging out, with the Samoans and with the Undertaker and with the Godfather,
But then, there was times where we're playing dominoes, and I'm thinking to myself, like, how great is this?
Right.
Because I am a fan, and I have been forever. And then, so we'd be playing, and there was one of the stories in the book. I tell about one particular dominoes game, and so Kane would sit here, and Taker was here, so it went clockwise, and we were playing, and so every time Kane threw a domino in this one specific game, I was scoring points off him. And Taker all he was doing was fueling the fire on Kane, and he would say stuff and just like get on him. He was getting on him and just getting.
Well, like don't let this guy be like. What are you doing?
Like, what are you doing? Letting a rich kid do this, I was a rich kid, even though I had no money in my pocket. But I was a rich kid,
You're from Greenwich and you're playing with a bunch of rednecks. Like that's not. Yeah.
And, he's like, you're letting this kid from Greenwich do this. And so I'm scoring off him. I'm scoring, and Papa, Godfather, is just he's just feeding me. He's helping me. So we're getting close.
Love that they call him Papa, by the way.
Yeah, that's
Papa Shango's awesome. Yeah, of course.
So anyway, we're scoring. I'm scoring off him, and we're blowing him out.
Yeah.
Kane goes and he has the dominoes in his hands, and he looks at me and he goes, "If you score on me again," he goes, "I will chase you. I'm gonna beat your ass." And so,
does he say this with a wink and a smirk?
Hell no.
Okay, good.
There's no way. So he puts his domino down, and I'm holding my dominoes, and I'm looking at him, and I look over at Papa, and I just I'm looking at dominoes. I'm looking at Papa. Taker knows. Taker knows. He knows. And I went, and I'm looking, and I'm just delaying it, right? So finally I went, and I wound up.
No.
I slammed it. And I said, "Domino, mother effer."
Yeah.
And I ran. I took off. Boom, I was gone. He chased me.
He did.
We went upstairs, downstairs, running around the arena. And he wouldn't, and I'm laughing because I'm thinking like, all right, he's going to stop eventually.
Right.
He wouldn't stop. And he caught me.
And what did he do?
He pounded me. I was like, oh man. I was like, and he's punching me in the arm, and I'm like, ow, all right. But it was fun though, man. That's the part you miss the most is the camaraderie.
Yeah.
And it was so much fun.
I mean, especially as a guy who's a fan.
Yeah.
Right? Like, are you a guy who's good at keeping your fan part of you in check? Meaning, like, right away you get there and you can be cool. Because there are guys that, like, you know, they could show up in the same scenario as you as a fan and, like, kind of lose their mind because there's not that's another faux pas for sure. You're not going to hang out with anybody.
You don't mark out.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I mean, don't get me wrong. It was more of an honor to be with those guys and to get to know them.
Absolutely.
You know, who they are.
And their place in the business, not necessarily being a fan of them, like, oh, you know what my favorite match was, but their places in the wrestling business and what they've contributed to it and that side of it, which is way different than I'm a fan of this guy. It's like, you know,
what they've accomplished, stuff like that. I mean, that's huge,
right?
You know,
right.
But you know, I'm more of a fan of them as people,
right,
and who they are.
Right.
You know, that's the
type of guy that'll kick your ass if you score on him a dominoes too many times.
Yeah, but I mean, they just, you know, I mean, don't get me wrong. I was a fan of theirs before, and a fan of theirs even more so now, just because I know who they are. You know? But
how long did it take you to be familiar on that level with those guys? Because it seems like
I think I was okay with it. I was okay with it from the beginning.
That's amazing.
No, but you got to understand too, and
like,
we were around them. Because
Shane,
right. So like I did a cover with the Undertaker for Christmas back in 1998. I played Santa Claus, and Undertaker hovered over me with a tattoo. He tattooed Santa's ass, and I was Santa Claus. And I was
that for the merchandise catalog?
Yes.
And you're Santa Claus.
I'm Santa Claus.
Somebody's going to find that merchandise catalog now and tweet it to you. Because I remember, like, I vaguely...
Oh, I had to shave my ass.
Remember the cover. That's your ass,
It's
though.
my ass. I shaved it right before I went down to New Jersey to take the photo shoot. I swear to God.
So how does Shane... Does Shane call you up and be like, Gas?
No,
like...
that was guys I grew up with that worked in that department of... what was it called? Creative? Not creative.
Creative services?
No, they did like the T-shirts and the merch.
Sure.
All the merch.
Now it's just like merchandising, but yeah.
Right. So they were the ones that made all the designs and stuff. They needed someone to play Santa Claus, and I remember we did the photo shoot, but we didn't do it like in a side room. We did it in front of everyone. It's like, there I am, just sitting there with my ass hanging out, and Taker standing over it. And
so like you're kind of known as a guy who's a good sport. Who's just gonna like who's a fun dude.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. I'm just gonna. I mean, that's great. That's a good reputation to have. So, I guess that's what I'm wondering. Do Shane and the guys in that department, do people in the WWE just kind of before you get there know you as a guy who's like, because you're young. Pete Gas is as fun as his kid. He'll do whatever. You don't care.
Yeah, I mean, those
like he always wants to just do something. So we'll get him if we needed Santa to show his ass in a magazine. Yeah,
well, those guys
Gas will do it.
The guys that asked me knew I would do it because I grew up with those guys.
Right, that's what I mean.
Yeah, so they knew that.
Like you grow up with enough with you know hands. This guy over here, that guy over here, that guy over here, and you start to earn a reputation.
And they knew I never had a problem pulling my pants down, so I guess I didn't have a problem with that.
I guess not. Is there anything that now, because you're a married guy now, is there anything that you show your wife is like this is cool, this is the thing that I did, and then maybe is there anything that you are like, don't worry about that part? Like would you maybe avoid the Santa ass cheek catalog and show her everything? Show her all of it.
Doesn't matter.
It's great.
Yeah, she's fine. But it's funny because she really didn't watch wrestling, and now she's hooked on it.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Did you bring her back in the day and show her like the Mean Street Posse stuff?
Yeah, she's seen some of it. Probably most of it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm excited because I heard the network's going to have like Sunday Night Heat. They're going to start putting that stuff on the network.
Man, I hope so. We were talking about that.
We did a lot of stuff for them.
Well, Sunday Night Heat, like we were talking about that on the podcast a couple weeks ago or something, that there's like a handful of shows, like the syndicated shows from when we were kids, like WWF Superstars and WWF Challenge. Like I'd love to see that. But in the Attitude Era, Sunday Night Heat was not a throwaway show. Like there was just so much going on back then. Because you also think about it, and a lot of what happened on Heat was pre-SmackDown, right? Yeah. Like you had Heat before you had SmackDown, I think.
You had Jacked was before. Well, we did Jacked before Raw.
No. I mean before SmackDown. Did Heat exist before SmackDown? Existed?
I don't remember exactly, but I know we used to shoot it before
SmackDown. Right, okay.
So we used to shoot it, and that was a show that we shot, and then we went into SmackDown.
But you just had so many guys and so much stuff going on that Heat was full of like storylines and stuff. There wasn't this notion of like, oh yeah, that's just this hour that we throw on Sunday. That was on MTV. Like that was a big show.
Yeah. And I remember we did one episode of Heat. It was all about us, Edge and Christian, and Matt and Jeff Hardy. And there were vignettes throughout the entire thing. And the premise is that Edge and Christian went and got their manager's licenses, which were blue. Which that was a joke about it.
Right? Yeah.
And
they are blue.
Right?
Yeah.
And so they got their license, and the premise was if we won, we challenged them in the very first segment. Matt and Jeff, we challenged them. I called Jeff Rainbow Head, and we tried to piss them
almost as good as Buckethead,
right? Yeah, to get them to put up their titles for a match, and then Edge and Christian were going to help us win the match. So throughout that episode, like they were training us, they were making Rodney ride the bike and doing all these things.
It's all coming back to me now. Yeah,
and then I went and got them pretzels or sodas or whatever, and they needed straws, and like we were doing all this stuff and then they came out with us at the end, and we thought we won the match, and we didn't. They Matt kind of turned it around and pinned Rodney, and they didn't have the right angle. They told me as soon as they saw Rodney go to cover to turn around to the crowd to celebrate.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Matt reverses it, so I'm celebrating in the ring like we won, and behind me Rodney's getting pinned by Matt, but you don't see it because they didn't have that angle for the episode.
Right.
But it would have been funny.
I mean, but that's just cool episodic television, like storytelling. Not even episode, but as like the episode goes on, like segment here's throw this segment on, then a match, then the continuing story over here, and then a match, and then that conclusion at the end. Like that's cool.
Right.
Like you don't see that too often.
Right. And the stipulation was if Edge and Christian helped us win, we would give them a shot on Raw for the titles the following night.
Right.
So it kept people
But that's amazing too, because you talk about not being a throwaway show, and not only is it not a throwaway show, but now you've got people watching Heat going, "Oh my God, I think the Posse's going to win the tag titles tonight on Heat from the Hardys." Yeah, like that's this mega event. That's hilarious. What was Rodney doing when you were doing stuff like playing dominoes with the Undertaker and his crew? Like who's Rodney hanging with?
Rodney was he was playing a lot of video games
by himself, or did he have a crew too?
There was a crew: Mark Henry, Stevie Richards. They were the video game guys.
Gotcha.
And they would play. I remember college. I forgot what the college football game was. I forgot what the name was.
Yeah.
But I remember Mark Henry had to be. He went to Texas, and he had to be Texas because Ricky Williams was a running back, and he had to be, and he would kill everybody. And but they would play for hours, and and guys would just sit there and it was like a frat house.
So Rodney had just as easy a time getting along with people as you did.
Oh yeah.
It was just
it was the very beginning. After when we came back after our little hiatus after the Briscoe Patterson thing, that's when they decided they were going to bring us back and give us the 3 1-year contracts. That's when people were kind of like, what are these guys doing here? And that's when we really had to start paying our dues.
Because now it's like, this isn't just a goof thing. These guys are actually going to work. Like,
So now it's like, they're back. They're taking airtime. And some guys didn't care because we weren't a threat to them because they were over and they were doing, but some guys didn't feel that way.
Yeah. I mean, I would imagine, some of the lower, even mid-card guys that are like working all their lives to get something, when you guys come in and get real contracts, not just like bid part things.
Right.
Yeah, what are we doing? But at the same time, you do this segment that's the highest rated segment. It's like, that's kind of how this thing works, right?
Exactly.
Like the people who are wanted to be watched on TV are the ones that are going to get TV time.
Right. And I think that's, I don't know, but it kind of all makes sense is that's why we came back. That's why they brought us back.
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't you? I mean,
did you? I think we talked about this last time, but we were just talking about it before we started taping, and you were saying that you weren't allowed to have an action figure because I got all the wrestling figures around here. I've been collecting forever.
I see that.
And I was thinking about it today before you came by. I was like, no, there's never been a Mean Street Posse figure because I was like, I'm still waiting for the first person to come in here who's also got their action figure in here.
Right.
But how come? Yeah, because I would think you'd at least have like a T-shirt that's like the tuxedo T-shirts. Why wouldn't they make like a Mean Street Posse sweater vest T-shirt?
Well, that's what Who knows?
Right?
Yeah. I mean, the same guys that got me to drop my pants.
Right.
They came up with, back then, they came up with a design for the Green Witch Project. Instead of the Blair Witch Project, kind of a spinoff. And that little symbol was a $, kind of like the same thing. And then there's a whole thing about, it's called the, and then on the back it was like, 3 men that came to the WWF, or WWF with a vengeance and blah blah blah, like a whole storyline thing. They came up with all these ideas, but it all got shot down. We weren't back then. Not everybody got those things. Not everybody got a T-shirt. Not everybody got an action figure. No, it was. I was shocked that we were able to become characters in the video game.
Yeah,
and we were hidden characters. You had to win X amount of matches to get to us, to have access to us. And Vince didn't want to show favoritism. I found that out through Shane.
So it's almost like you get less.
Well, put it this way: if there's a guy that's been breaking his ass, and and he here comes 2 guys from Greenwich, Shane's buddies, and they get for example, when we went, the company went public, we weren't allowed to buy stock. The guys were allowed to get stock. We weren't allowed to get stock.
Specifically, the posse can't get stock.
We were not allowed to get stock.
Because they didn't want to show favoritism.
We weren't allowed to get it at the price, which I still remember the price was $17. They were allowed to get it at. And I remember Bradshaw telling everybody when he got to 34, that same day, get out. I swear to God.
Yeah, I mean, and he's a stock expert, so...
They doubled their money. They got out.
Wow.
And that was the other thing, too, is like, and I had heard that was different. Like, guys back then, they had stock tips, and I'll never forget Big Show came in once and he said, hey, there's an IPO coming out. Everyone should get involved. Krispy Kreme. And of course he got a lot of grief for Krispy Kreme donuts.
He's the one who's going to suggest that, yeah.
He made a lot of money on that.
I'll bet he did. Everybody's laughing at him and he's like, okay guys, that's real funny, right? Yeah.
He's like, you guys should buy.
He got in on the Krispy Kreme IPO.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. I'm losing all my money in Bitcoin, so I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah, I mean, you'd think, look, this is what they're putting out. This Virgil figure, I put a Not Sam shirt on.
I like it.
But this thing came out like this year.
Come on.
This is from this Christmas season. So, you would think,
It would be cool to have throwbacks, right? I mean, they had the 3-dimensional. They took the 3D thing for our heads because of the thing. It would always be cool.
Yeah.
Some fan, back when we were wrestling, put together a Mean Street Posse characters. And I always thought it would be cool, and I bought it for my mom off eBay. Do you know how much it cost me?
How much?
$50.
For your own thing that somebody made?
I had to outbid. I'm not kidding you. There was like three or four people, and it cost me $50 to buy the Pete Gas doll. That wasn't even Pete Gas. I think it was Vince's head. We had the same haircut.
And then did you have to put did you have to send it, did they ask Pete Gas?
Yeah.
Are you actually Pete Gas? Did they put 2 and 2 together?
Yeah, they did.
And did you just tell them
then I gave it to my mother for Christmas.
Yeah.
And then about a month later, the dog walked by with it in his mouth. And I confiscated it, so I still have it.
Yeah, but there's some teeth marks in it?
No, it wasn't. Okay. I got it early.
Yeah,
drool, but that's about it.
Because it's one of one.
Yeah,
you can't reach out to the company and get another one. But look, Mattel is doing some weird stuff with toys right now. They put out this Virgil. Before this, they put out an Isaac Yankem.
Come on.
They're putting out a...
That's awesome, though.
Remember when Earthquake went...
You don't have it over there?
I got Isaac Yankem over there. Oh, yeah. I'll show it to you. Remember when Earthquake went to WCW and he became the Shark?
I do.
He's like the worst... This year, they're putting out an action figure of the Shark. They're just putting out the weirdest,
And no MSP?
I mean, the lane's wide open. As far as I can see.
You're the man now. I mean, you're the guy.
I should reach out to them and say,
you are
at least... I mean, you could put together a Pete and Rodney 2-pack and then throw in Joey Abs in there. Yeah, why not?
Right?
Why not?
That would be pretty cool.
Are there any...
You got to show me some of those. Seriously.
I will. I'll show you right after.
I'm actually really interested in that stuff.
Yeah, and I just had the guy from Mattel on the podcast, so I will absolutely...
I got heat with him then.
I'm going to send him a text, and say, look... the people want posse. Matter of fact,
people want posse.
People want the posse.
You could have said something so bad right now.
You guys out there right now, tweet at Mattel, whoever you need to tweet, hashtag people want posse. And get some,
people want posse.
People want posse. Make sure you spell it right.
I got a story now.
Yeah.
So Stone Cold, he said it every single day, but it was funny every time he said it. we would be walking by, going to get ready, get dressed for a match or something, and he'd be in the hallway drinking black coffee, and he would yell, "Posse, I thought you said," and then he would say the other
pussy.
Yeah. And the first time he said it, we kind of looked back at him, and then he just said it every
day.
It was like a broken record, but it was funny every time he said it.
I must say, in that Austin voice too, it probably just got funnier.
Oh yeah,
like the more he said, like the 100th time was probably the funniest time.
And then there's a big thing of chaw in his mouth, and he's spitting in a cup. Posse, it was great though. It was awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Is there any story in your book? Because I think that the one thing, the last time we spoke, it was like an hour, and you were like, what's ironic here is we have not even scratched the surface.
Yeah, I feel like,
and I think we still, there's still, we could do this, I think, over and over and over again until the end of time. Is there any story either in your book, or are there stories that are not in your book?
I don't think so.
Or did you?
Well, there's stories that I kind of kept clean.
Right.
I am married.
But but that's what's great about
that was out of respect for my wife. I didn't want to,
Sure, yeah, that's just,
right.
We got to have a life outside this book somewhere, right?
Right.
Right.
Now, if I was single, it would have been a bestseller.
But I think that that's what's so great about your book is that it's just like all these stories that people want to hear.
Yeah.
Right. It's not like a whole. Here it is. Here's the fun stories that you want to hear about the guys that you love.
But the funny thing about the book is, and I guess maybe the timing was. It's never a bad time because it's the Attitude Era. Maybe it's bad timing because I've been out of the business for a while. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it's a book that if someone reads it, and I've yet to find someone that's read it that said it sucked.
Right.
And I mean that. You're always going to have someone negative saying, "Oh, he kissed Shane's ass in the book." Well, you know what? I did kiss his ass because if you want to call it that, because what he did for me is something that no one could do for
It's amazing that it's like you can't be. It's not.
It's
well, he's loyal to his friend. He's an ass kisser.
He already did the stuff. I don't have to kiss his ass.
You're not kissing his ass for one more run.
Right. Not that I wouldn't take it.
Although, if you're out there, Shane.
But honestly, and I feel like if the way this book is going to really sell is if someone reads it and says, "Hey, this is my copy. You should go out and get this thing, man. If you like the Attitude Era, you're really going to enjoy it." And that's the way it's been with,
Yeah. And
I've been on a lot of radio shows and a lot of stuff, and the people that do read it really do like it. And the guy that wrote it with me, John Robinson's done a lot of books with WWE, and he and I just talked last month right before Christmas, and he says, he goes, that book, he said, it just doesn't do, people are buying it, but they're not as many people as we thought would be. And it's one of those reasons because, again, I haven't been in the business that long. It's been so long since I've been in the business.
Sure.
But he says, I'm so proud of that book. He goes, it's really a good book. And this is the guy, and he's not just saying it to blow smoke.
Right.
He didn't have to say anything.
Right.
He already put the work in.
Well, I think it's like these interviews that we do. I think that people kind of forget. And it's also look, the thing about being in the Attitude Era is the good part is that it was the biggest time in the history of wrestling, so you can put a book like this out.
Yeah.
The bad thing is it's got the most stars ever. So there's a lot of people in there.
Yeah.
And to kind of fight your way through to be like, hey, guys, remember Pete Gas? People will be like, oh, yeah, no. Yeah, Edge and Christian, I remember those guys. People forget that the posse worked with everybody. Backstage stories aside, the fact that you're playing dominoes with the Undertaker, the fact that Kane's chasing you up and down the hallways, the fact that Hardcore Holly is being like, yeah, I gave you everything. Backstage aside, just from a fan perspective, if you start scanning through the network, you realize that in that era, the posse worked with everybody. And
but the story itself though is about how Vince took two guys with no experience.
Right.
Sam, this has never been done before, and it never will be now that with the Performance Center and all the other stuff going on. They don't just take two guys and throw them in the ring.
No.
Without experience.
No.
You'll never see that again.
Especially not take two guys with no experience and then match them up with Briscoe and Patterson, who are too old. They're not working a full match, right?
Right.
And be like, here, do a segment. Here's a whole segment of live TV on the highest rated show on cable. Right. Go for it, guys. Here's your 15 minutes.
And that's the thing, people. I guess people, once you kind of put all those pieces together and realize it's something that's never been done before,
right?
And it tells that story, and it's kind of, it's great for us because it was sure we got the opportunity from Vince, but like if it sucked or if it didn't get reactions or ratings, we would have been done.
Or
he's not going to have us on because he's known us since we were in 10th grade or whatever.
It's business.
That's business. That doesn't just like when we eventually got let go. That was business. Boom.
Right.
Hurt like hell, but we got let go, and that was it.
Right.
So it is what it is. It's business.
Right.
But we had a great run, and we did something that no one's ever done before.
Well, I would. Have you checked out the Performance Center? Have you been down there?
I have.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable,
isn't it? Like,
wow.
Can you do you think about that? Like, not that you would have come through the Performance Center because I don't think you would want to change your journey, but just thinking about like in that time off, like either in the time we talked about when you were in Puerto Rico or even in that period of time between your runs in Memphis.
Yeah.
Like if you had access to that.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
There's no reason, with all respect to everyone that's down in the Performance Center, there's no reason to not get better. Right.
And you watch NXT, and most of those people are coming from the Performance Center, and they are getting better, right?
Yeah. And that's a testament to Triple H. I mean, that's his baby. Yeah. Him and Matt Bloom. Yeah. Who I love. He's a great guy.
Are you surprised at all to see where people end up? Did you think when you were hanging out with
Matt?
Albert at the time, that he's going to be the guy who's the head coach down at the Performance Center one day, and that this guy's going to be doing this, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't. I mean,
or that even the Road Dogg is one of the top.
Now him, I did
top guys over there. Really?
Yeah.
Why is that?
I'm just because he has this knowledge of the business. Mm-hmm. He knows, like he and X-Pac. And I personally autographed books for them and gave them copies, and I wrote a real nice note about how much they helped me. They would help us backstage, tell us how to cut the ring off when you're doing tag stuff, and the little things, the little things to make a match better, to make it make sense.
Right.
And how much, what they really did. He has that knowledge. I mean, it's in his blood. It's in his family, and he knows that business. And you just knew that he had that sense for it. I mean, at least I did because of the way he helped me. And those guys, and I wrote to them about how much they helped me, thank you, but more importantly just being a friend.
Yeah.
Because during that era when guys were trying to knock our heads off, those guys were helping.
Yeah. And they didn't have to.
Right. Edge and Christian, the same thing.
Yeah.
So those guys were really helpful.
I think X-Pac is it's criminally underrated. Yeah. How much insight he has
no doubt.
To the business. Every time I talk to him, and I talk to him a lot, but anytime I talk to him, and I've been watching, I'm not a wrestler, as you may or may not know.
No, you're
but, But, I've been watching this stuff for 34 years, all my life. And anytime I'm watching with him, he'll just point out this little thing. Like, I'll go, what did you think of this match? Or, what do you think about this? And he'll just point out this little thing that, I never would have even seen.
Right.
And I go, oh my, you're right. He goes, well, no, the way he's doing that ankle right there, he could have done this and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like that, in the snap of the fingers.
Smoother,
right.
More fluid.
And I go, oh my God, it never even occurred to me that you could change that, let alone that you could change it to that.
Right.
Right?
Absolutely.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is.
Well, people can get your book on Amazon. Is that the best place?
Barnes & Noble.
Yeah. Yep. I've seen it. It's on store shelves. That's that's pretty amazing,
that's
huh?
Cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Well, everybody go out and get Pete Gass's book. If you weren't convinced by the last interview, you should be convinced by this one. And it's great. It's one of those books that'll last forever. You didn't get it when it came out. Buy it now. It's still just as good, right?
Still there. Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for hanging out, man. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. This is great, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for entering into the beautiful Not Sam Studios.
I love it.
Yeah, man. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, bud. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Here is Sam Roberts.
It's always so good to catch up with Pete Gass. I love that guy, and I love the success that he's having. I love the Pete Gass nostalgia run that we're all on. And really, get out there and start tweeting at Mattel. I don't see if Mattel's got all these quirky characters that they're turning into action figures, like the Shark and Isaac Yankem and Virgil and who else is over there? The Shockmaster. I mean, Adam Rose's bunny got one. We've never had Mean Street Posse action figures. I don't know why now would not be a great time to get one. So go out there. Let Mattel know what you want. In the meantime, if we're talking about merchandise, we got to be talking about the Not Sam stuff, right? I'm talking about Not Sam shirts, the classic NOTSAM design. I'm talking about Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast t-shirts. I'm talking about the Sam Roberts 8-bit shirt. I'm talking about the classic. Get your opinion out there on me with the Shill Roberts Shill t-shirt. They're all available now, and that Shill Roberts Shill t-shirt is fabulous. You can get the Sam Roberts as a little kid shirt. You can get whatever you need over at notsam.com/merch. You go to notsam.com. There's a merch button right there. But if you go to notsam.com/merch, you'll go straight to the store, and you'll be able to pick up your very own Sam Roberts t-shirt. Let those colors fly. And I'll be around at a lot of WWE this month. I'll be around in the vicinity for the Raw 25th anniversary, for NXT TakeOver Philly, for the Royal Rumble. I'll be around. And if you want to impress me when you see me, you got to have one of those Sam Roberts shirts on, right? Guys come up to me and they're like, I'm a big fan. And I look at their t-shirt and I go, apparently not that big of a fan. So go over to notsam.com/merch and prove me wrong now. Before we get into the state of wrestling and what I deem the 5 biggest stories in wrestling of the week, a big story in wrestling podcasting broke this week when Colt Cabana said as of 2018, which is the year that we're in now, he will no longer be doing interviews on his podcast. Colt Cabana's podcast, and I feel like over the last year or two, it's been not the podcast itself, but the reputation, the knowledge of this podcast, the legacy of the podcast has not been given the credence that it so deserves. Colt Cabana was really the first, in my mind, he doesn't like to say this because I guess, I don't know, but in my mind, Colt Cabana was really the first mainstream wrestling podcast. And I believe Colt Cabana was the first wrestler to really show that podcasting could make sense on a monetary level. Right, Colt Cabana figured out how to turn it into a business without sacrificing any of his art. And what Colt really did, as a fan of comedy, you know, it's clear to me that Colt Cabana saw great podcasters like Mark Maron and people like that and said, hey, like, I know that they find the world of comedy fascinating, but I'm obsessed with this world of wrestling. And I think there are a lot of other people that are obsessed with this world of wrestling. And I think there's a place in the podcast sphere for it. And so that's what he did. And it was kind of unproven, the idea of a wrestler podcasting and interviewing another wrestler. That it wasn't as much of a no-brainer as it is today because people hadn't done it. Colt Cabana was podcasting before I was. You know, I was on the radio, but he is the one that had this wrestling podcast. And certainly the first wrestling podcast that I listened to. And, you know, I guess he has done it all. I mean, he's accomplished what he set out to accomplish. And he's now going to be doing more of a diary type podcast. It's going to be an audio journal of what he's doing in the world as an independent wrestler. And I think that's a great idea because, you know, I think Colt's story is an amazing story in the sense that he's done so much independently and he had this WWE dream and it didn't quite work out, but now he's just doing other things and it's working for him. And he's creating a name without a machine behind it. But I don't think that we're aware enough of what the ongoing story sounds like. So I'm looking forward to his new podcast. But part of the reason why I put this out there was because I kind of didn't even put myself into this conversation. I just thought this was a conversation about Colt Cabana. And over the week, somebody tweeted him and said, hey, man, you know, I love your podcast. If you're not going to be I'm going to keep listening, and I suggest everybody do. But if you're not going to be doing these in-depth interviews anymore, like, where can I go? And to my surprise, and this is because I guess Cabana's just a really good dude like that, Colt said Sam Roberts. He said @notsam is probably where you would go. And I didn't even think about that. You know, the fact that, well, somebody's got to take the reins on this wrestling interview podcast thing. And I would never put myself in that category because Colt Cabana comes from a different perspective. You know, the idea of wrestlers interviewing other wrestlers is always going to be different than non-wrestlers interviewing wrestlers just because of the life experience and the perspective. It's why when you watch the NFL, there's a football player in the play-by-play booth along with a broadcaster, because the broadcaster can study all he wants. He's not going to understand what it feels like to be on the field. And that's what Colt Cabana brought to the table, and guys like Stone Cold Steve Austin and even Bruce Pritchard, even though he doesn't do interviews, have brought to podcasting, is sharing that perspective. I share a different perspective. I share the perspective of a fan, a guy who's loved wrestling for 34 years now and continues to love wrestling and is just having the time of his life getting to talk to some of these people. So, that said, I am going to be doubling down and really trying to focus on that part of what we do here on Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast. Not that I wasn't focused on it before, but because there is a need for good wrestling interviews out there, that's something I'm gonna try to do. And when there are guys that you want on the podcast, please tweet me, tweet them, let them know that there's this desire. I mean, it worked. We're gonna have Dalton Castle on soon. We're still gonna continuously have guests on from WWE, independent wrestling, international wrestling, all over the place. But it really helps me when you guys show an interest in who you want me to talk to. I'm not one of these guys who's on the road, finding a guy in a locker room and saying, hey, do my podcast. I'm a guy who's like, hey, we got to figure out when you got some free time to either, come to a studio in New York or head down to the Not Sam studios and let's lay something down for the people so we can get a conversation going like the one that I had with Pete Gass. So let me know who you want on the show this year. Let them know that you want them on this show. And we're really going to try to focus on the interview aspect of this thing. Not to say that the state of wrestling is going anywhere. The state of wrestling is going to remain intact. Our format, as of, last week, is the top 5 stories in the world of professional wrestling from my eyes, and sometimes I'll open that up to you guys on Facebook to contribute to. So, enough talking about the state of wrestling. Let's get into it. Let's find out what this week's top 5 stories are.
It's now time for this week's State of Wrestling.
So the number 5 story this week in the state of wrestling as we count down, in my mind, is the fact that on SmackDown this week, Sami Zayn pins the WWE champion AJ Styles. And look, this is something that we talked about, I think just last week here on the podcast, that Sami Zayn is quickly becoming a serious contender for the WWE championship. It's not just him there to inflate, or not inflate's the wrong word, but to support, I guess, Kevin Owens. He's not just there in a support role for main event Kevin Owens. I think Sami Zayn is there to be an equal. And honestly, he's doing some of the best stuff he's ever done right now as a bad guy. In the short amount of time that he's been doing what he's doing, just his presence, what he does in the ring, his promos, everything is just some of the best stuff that he's done since coming to the main roster. So I think that there are 2 reasons why, to me, Sami Zayn beating AJ Styles is a big story. Number 1, because it certainly puts Sami Zayn on a different pedestal than he's been in a very, very, very long time. Maybe since his injury. You recall that Sami Zayn, when the John Cena United States Wimbledon Memorial Open Battle Royal Challenge first began, Sami Zayn from NXT was the guy who popped out. This was before Kevin Owens from NXT accepted the challenge. It was Sami Zayn. He injured himself right before the match, but he still had the match, and it was a great match, and he had all this buzz around him. And if he hadn't been injured in that moment, maybe he would have been on the Kevin Owens path at that moment. But instead, he got hurt. He had to sit on the back burner for a little while. When he returned, he was back in NXT for a little bit, and that's when he was there until Nakamura debuted so that he could make his way up the main roster. But I would say, since that moment, since the John Cena-Sami Zayn match before Sami's injury, his stock has not been as high as it was this week, as of SmackDown pinning the champion. And while there was chicanery and tricks abound, still, there's no doubt that he gets credit for, even without the tricks, holding his own against the champion, and with the tricks, pinning him. So there's that. There's that moment of Sami being like, oh, this is different than I thought it was. There's the idea that anytime a champion gets pinned, it's a big story, I suppose. It should be, right? In principle, it is. But to me, the biggest part of Sami Zayn pinning Kevin Owens was what was happening around it, the storytelling going on around it. And that is the Shane McMahon, Daniel Bryan story. And for me, even more, I believe that Daniel Bryan's going to be wrestling this year at WrestleMania. Even more now than ever. And the reason for that is that up until this week, so starting in late October probably, as we started building towards Survivor Series, Shane McMahon started doing some kind of weird stuff that Daniel Bryan might have taken some exception with, right? In the last month or so, there has been noted tension leading up to and coming out of Clash of Champions. There's been mounting tension. Coming out of Clash of Champions, there was actually, at the Clash, physical contact between Daniel Bryan and Shane McMahon. Coming out of Clash of Champions, it was clear these two don't get along. I think that from the beginning, the story that we were kind of being pushed towards was a story of Daniel Bryan being a bad guy and possibly being on the side of Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. But to me, that story didn't hold water. To me, if you're paying attention to everything that's gone on, up until this week, nothing that Daniel Bryan did was unjustifiable. Nothing that Daniel Bryan did was even outside of the professional interest of the SmackDown brand. It was Shane McMahon that was acting from an emotional place, and just because he was attacking a bad guy, quote unquote, does not mean that he was being a good guy. Because as the guy who's in charge of SmackDown, he wasn't thinking about SmackDown. He was thinking about his personal beefs, right? The character was thinking about his personal issues with Sami and Kevin, and not, okay, these are guys that belong here on SmackDown, and let me give these two guys this much attention, and I got to pay attention to the middle of the show and the beginning of the show and blah, blah, blah. No, it was just, let me do whatever I can to make Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens' lives miserable, and I'm going to try to fire them. Let me figure out a reason to fire them without actually having a reason to fire them. It's a very bad guy thing to do. Daniel Bryan was right last week when he said that Shane McMahon was becoming Mr. McMahon, right? That was right. He was right on. You can't really argue that too much. This week was the first time that I think that they decided in WWE to double down and make it clear that Daniel Bryan was not necessarily on the up and up, that Daniel Bryan might have more than SmackDown's best interest at heart, because he did. Because especially at the end, I mean, and Shane's not off the hook, because Shane shoving Kevin Owens, just from a logical, what are the rules, what's justifiable, good person standpoint, was not justified. The boss of a company cannot put his hands on one of the superstars, right? Because the superstar technically can't fight back. This is your boss, because the boss shouldn't be this emotional about his superstars anyway, for a multitude of reasons. That was the wrong thing to do. But for Daniel Bryan to turn around and make a handicap match for the Royal Rumble was totally not something that was done because that was the championship match that the SmackDown universe needed to see. Daniel Bryan doing that was either because he really is on the side of Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, or he's just so fed up with Shane McMahon that he wants to do stuff that bothers Shane, right? There is this possibility in this story that the Daniel Bryan character is not necessarily on the side of Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, but he's more on the side of pissing off Shane McMahon, which is believable and justifiable and something that we can believe that character would do. We're still running a huge risk. If the story we're telling is that Daniel Bryan is indeed on the side of Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, I do not see how Daniel Bryan becomes a bad guy ever, ever, ever. Especially since he's not wrestling. He's so beloved, and people want to see him in the ring so much that you will never, ever get him booed. It just won't happen, right? And it's almost like the lesson that we learned from the whole Yes movement. The lesson of Daniel Bryan's entire career is that Daniel Bryan is special, and there is something about Daniel Bryan that stops us from the norm, that stops us from being able to dictate the audience reaction to him. It stops us from being like, okay, well, now we're going to turn him. Well, now we're going to put him back here. As of this moment, the fans are locked on to Daniel Bryan. And if you get him back in the ring, I'm not saying Daniel Bryan can never, ever be a bad guy ever again. But, you know, he's so desired by fans to be back in a WWE ring that I don't think you're ever going to boo him. So, I'm very intrigued by this championship match at the Royal Rumble. I don't think anybody necessarily saw it coming. It saves us matches, right? It makes it so we're not wasting any matches that we would see at a WrestleMania or at a whatever. You know, we still can move with this story as we go. The one good thing about this is if they do try to make Daniel Bryan a bad guy, as much as I don't think he'll ever get booed in a match against Shane McMahon, if he does have his match with Shane McMahon, he can theoretically come out of that match and have a match later down the road with AJ Styles, with AJ being a good guy. Again, I still don't think that Daniel Bryan will ever be looked at as a bad guy. But if it means we get a Daniel Bryan-AJ match, then so be it. I do, however, still absolutely think that Daniel Bryan's wrestling in a WWE ring again. His latest quote on the matter was, if I'm not wrestling at WrestleMania, I'll probably never wrestle in a WWE ring again, but it's not, and this is paraphrasing, it's not so black and white. Right? We're not, you can never be 100% sure. So, I don't know where it leaves us, but I'm sticking with my prediction, and I think that will become clear to all of us at the Royal Rumble when we see this handicap match go down. I mean, it's clear that Daniel Bryan and Shane McMahon are going to be involved somehow. And if Daniel isn't coming back to a WWE ring, which of course is very, very possible, if not probable, you know, I don't know what the betting odds would be on that, but it's going to be a major disappointment based on all the buildup that we've had over the last couple of months. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. The number 4 story this week, in my mind, is breaking as we record this. As of Wednesday, we find out the first 2 tag teams in the Mixed Match Challenge. Of course, Mixed Match Challenge is the Facebook show that WWE is doing. They're going to launch it, I think, in a week or 2. It's being launched before the Royal Rumble. And I think it's a 20-minute show. It's happening every Tuesday after SmackDown, live on Facebook. And it's a tag tournament of intergender tag matches between Raw and SmackDown. And they announced some of the participants as singles, but none of the teams who would be teamed up. This week, Kurt Angle tweeted out that because of Enzo Amore having the flu, he wouldn't be a part of Mixed Match Challenge. That doesn't make sense because Enzo doesn't have to wrestle for Mixed Match Challenge until way after his flu is going to be over. So I would imagine that something happened on Raw this week where Vince McMahon or somebody else just decided, you know what, I actually want to have this person in. I don't want to do Enzo anymore. Nah. You know, and that's the danger of not being around, I suppose. But 2 teams were chosen for Mixed Match Challenge. One is on the SmackDown side. Daniel Bryan announced it. Charlotte and Bobby Roode teaming up. And I don't know if it's just because they both wear robes. To me, the combination makes sense. Again, could just be that they both wear robes. But I feel like proclaiming yourself glorious and proclaiming that you have flair, those things go together. I'm good with it. You know, I don't know who I would rather see Charlotte. Honestly, like, I don't know that AJ Styles is performing for Mixed Match Challenge. I don't have the list in front of me. But that would be the dream team, obviously. Charlotte, if you're going to do intergender, putting the best woman in WWE, Charlotte, versus with on the same side as the best wrestler in the world, AJ Styles would be the dream team. And I'm assuming, by the way, that these mixed tag matches will work the way they have traditionally in WWE, not the way they work on the indies, where when a female is tagged in, the other female has to come in. There's not going to be any men versus women here. I would seriously doubt that. The Raw side, one team has been introduced, and this team is a really interesting team, and I love it. Alexa Bliss and Braun Strowman are teaming up for the Mixed Match Challenge. Again, I'm not saying that those two teams are facing each other. Those are just two teams that are participating in the tournament show. I think it's going to make Braun Strowman just look like a monster, and that wasn't a mistake. I can't imagine that was done by accident, to get the smallest person on your roster and put her next to the biggest person on your roster. Like, all it's going to do is make Braun Strowman just look like a beast, just look like a monster. And I'm interested in seeing how they interact, I think it's the right move, because on Raw, what two people, what man and what woman are grabbing more attention? I saw that Nia Jax was on Twitter in character complaining that she did not get to be partners with Braun Strowman. But I don't want to see, Nia Jax, while she has more personality than your average monster, she's not like most girls. I don't know if you've heard that or not. But I think that Nia and Braun together, like, Nia is as close to a Braun Strowman as anybody is on the women's roster, more so than Tamina. And I don't want to see two monsters together. I want to see different. If we're going to make this a special thing, even though I just said Bobby Roode and Charlotte both have robes, but I like the idea of opposites attract. I like this opposite team. So I'm interested. I just thought it was cool that they introduced that and went forward with it. Of course, there were some other stories. The Women's Royal Rumble is really shaping up into something. You got Samoa Joe and Roman Reigns, but to me, the number 3 story this week is the vignettes we saw announcing that The Miz was returning to Raw next week. And that's not, I'm not trying to make it seem like The Miz coming back to Raw is the biggest story ever, because The Miz has done many movies and had to return to Raw, or SmackDown. But the story here is that The Miz was just named Rolling Stone WWE Superstar of the Year. And people asked me why I didn't mention The Miz much, or if at all, on the year-end special last week. And the reason is, I thought 2016 was the year of The Miz. I don't think 2017 was. I thought 2016 was the year of The Miz. 2016 was the year that I think that he came out of his shell. I think that it's the year that he made that leap from The Miz that we all knew into this sort of major league superstar. When he was on this podcast, he talked about the level of competition that he's at right now, and that he wants to be thought of as an elite superstar, and talked about what that meant. And I thought 2016 was the year that he became elite. I thought 2016 was the year he started to be elite, be elite. But that's not to say 2017 wasn't a great year for him, because he's one of my favorite wrestlers. But Miz has been one of my favorites for a long time. I was singing the praises of The Miz far before any of this was going on. So there's nothing like that going on here. But The Miz gets introduced or gets announced as Rolling Stone's top WWE Superstar of the Year, which obviously has resonated with somebody, because they made that part of their package for announcing that The Miz was coming back. Even having a package to announce that The Miz was coming back. And it was highlights, and it wasn't 10 seconds. It was highlights, it was sound bites, it was this whole thing that really made you feel like a big star was returning to WWE, and that's not something that they've done for The Miz every time he goes away. I don't remember the last time they did something that big for The Miz, especially because it's only been like 4 weeks. It hasn't been, this impossible length of time. You have to wonder if he's going to go right back for the Intercontinental title, and obviously, absence has made the heart grow fonder, I would imagine, with WWE, and they're looking at The Miz in a different light, in the sense that all this pomp and circumstances going around him. And I would recommend, after Raw this week, I watched the new WWE show on the network, Photo Shoot, where they have guys just looking at photos. It really, here's something that I thought about Photo Shoot on the WWE network. So what you're telling me is you're doing an interview without hiring an interviewer. They're using photos to tell a story. So instead of getting, primetime Sam Roberts, the last professional broadcaster, to show up on the WWE network and interview some of these guys, they're getting a photo projector. So that's where we're at right now. Hopefully at some point they'll say, hey, why don't we get the last professional broadcaster in here? But in the meantime, I'm being replaced by a photo projector. That said, it was actually a great show. And I did learn something. Watch the episode with The Miz. The Cesaro episode is actually really, really great too. But it's an honest show. And in the episode with The Miz, we actually learned some new, I think it's new insight, it was new to me, on the Talking Smack segment that made The Miz, which is the segment where Daniel Bryan said that he wrestles like a coward. And The Miz kind of flipped out and had the tears in his eyes, and Bryan ended up walking off, and he told Bryan he should just quit then, and he did the thing, and it made The Miz, no doubt about it. But the insight that show offered was Miz saying that before that episode of Talking Smack, and you don't even remember these things. That's how important moments are. The reality of the situation was he was not on SmackDown that week. As the Intercontinental Champion, he was not on SmackDown. He was told creative had nothing for him. They were focusing on introducing the SmackDown Women's Championship and furthering the SmackDown Tag Team Title Tournament, and they had nothing for the Intercontinental Champion. And The Miz was put off by it, and The Miz was pissed about it. And so he goes over, and he does Talking Smack, and it just all pours out of him. And it was really great to hear him tell that story. But in my opinion, the way The Miz is being treated upon his return is the number 3 story of the week. That's the big story. Not that The Miz is returning, but the way The Miz is being treated upon his return. We saw Becky Lynch. Absence made the heart grow fonder with her, too. I mean, there was no pomp and circumstance around her return. There was no vignettes or anything like that. But you heard the fans chanting for her. They definitely wanted Becky Lynch back. And when she shows up, you heard the reaction. It was pretty outstanding this week on SmackDown for Becky Lynch. So I think it's going to be something similar for The Miz. I think he's going to be able to maintain his heeldom. But I'd like to see him try to get the Intercontinental title back from Roman Reigns. I wouldn't mind seeing a Miz-Roman Reigns Intercontinental title build up towards the Royal Rumble. And who knows, I think it could be. Here's what I would do. I would have The Miz come back on Raw looking for a shot at Roman Reigns' Intercontinental Championship. I would have Kurt Angle push that match off to the Royal Rumble. He may push it to Raw 25, just because that's another show that you have to, promote. But I would have him push to the Royal Rumble. So at the Royal Rumble, you're looking at the triple threat match between Brock, Kane, Braun Strowman. You're looking for the Universal Championship. You're looking at the WWE Championship, AJ Styles versus Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. You're looking at the Women's Royal Rumble. You're looking at the Men's Royal Rumble. And I think you're looking at the SmackDown U.S. title tournament closer. And what I would do is I would give The Miz his rematch at the Royal Rumble. And he would have to cheat. It wouldn't be a clean victory. But I would have The Miz beat Roman Reigns at the Royal Rumble. I just think that it wouldn't hurt Roman Reigns. And Roman Reigns needs to get rid of the Intercontinental Championship anyway. Number 1, it's done no good for him. Number 2, he's done no good for the title. And number 3, and I'm worried that they're going to end up doing some kind of Roman Reigns Samoa Joe match at the Royal Rumble. But I'd rather see The Miz Roman Reigns, and I'd rather see The Miz win. Because Roman Reigns is going to be able to get away from that after he loses, especially because there'll be some kind of cheating involved. The Miz can get right back to where he was and go into WrestleMania as the Intercontinental Champion because it was really, really working for him. And Roman Reigns can go do what he's going to do at WrestleMania, which I would imagine is going to be around the Universal Championship. That said, should Roman Reigns come out of the Royal Rumble with the of WrestleMania with the Universal Championship, The Miz is right there to say, I beat you at the Royal Rumble. I can beat you for that title too. I would love to see The Miz chase Roman Reigns for the Universal Championship. I think it'd be great. And that said, yes, I do think it'll be a SmackDown guy that wins the Royal Rumble. I just, not quite sure who yet. Okay? That's the number 3 story. The number 2 story of the week. Also, on Monday Night Raw, it's the Good Brothers and Finn Balor on the same team at the same time for the first time since they were all in WWE together. And I thought it was really amazing. And I thought it was a great lesson for this world of wrestling. Because it was one of those things where on paper, I was like, I'm happy about this. When they announced it was going to happen and Finn Balor was smiling ear to ear, I was like, you know what? Awesome. They're going to have a fun match tonight. But in my head, I go, knowing WWE, just based on the history that we've all watched together, there is no reason to believe that this match is not going to be a one and done. That this is not going to be something that those guys come in, they have this match this week on Raw, and next week, Finn Balor's back to losing to Kane or something. What I think happened was, and who knows, maybe that is what will happen, but it's going to be difficult to pull that off because of three simple facts. Finn Balor, Karl Anderson, and Luke Gallows. What happened on Raw was that those three guys got together. And the same way Elias took full advantage of the fact that he got a segment with John Cena, and Elias' segment with John Cena put him on a different level, Finn Balor, Karl Anderson, and Luke Gallows decided to function as one performer. Instead of just being like, okay, I'll do my thing, you do your thing, you'll do your thing. And it really cemented itself for me in the finish of the match. It was very clear to me that these guys specifically went out there to make an impact as a team. I believe that the Good Brothers and Finn Balor left the WWE no choice but to leave them together. They made it so that any fan could see that as of now, if you look at this week's Raw and the last 2 or 3 episodes of Raw, Finn Balor, Karl Anderson, and Luke Gallows, all three of those guys are better when all three of those guys are together. No one, you're not sitting there, all of them looked better. And seeing them all, Finn Balor is still the leader, but Luke Gallows and Karl Anderson are brought to this whole new place. And just that they functioned so well as a team, they made it seem like they've been a team forever. They made it seem like this is our act. This is what we do on this show. The three of us team together. We don't have any interest in doing anything else. And they did that through their moves. They did that through the action. It wasn't in the promos. And, the promos were fine. And everybody's smiling. And all the references being made to the fact that they used to travel together in Japan. And they wrestled together in Japan and all this stuff. But what really made it click was the action in the ring. And what those guys decided to do by turning themselves into a unit. By making it so that they were not three individual performers anymore. They were one package deal. And I believe that because of what they did in terms of their moves, the audience at this moment right now would prefer to view those guys as a package deal. And I think it's going to happen because of them. I think that if you see them continue to work together as a team, they're working together as a team because of what they did. They got to the dance and then forced the WWE's hand, which is what you have to do. Not in a negative way. You take advantage of the opportunity given to you. Finn Balor, Karl Anderson, and Luke Gallows were offered an opportunity, and they seized on it, and are way better off for it. Look at what's going on now. So I'm excited to see what the future holds for this team, because obviously they know how to take advantage of a great situation. And speaking of Japan, the number one story for me in the world of professional wrestling this week is all Wrestle Kingdom. This week is the week Alpha versus Omega, Chris Jericho, Kenny Omega, one-on-one in the Tokyo Dome. Wrestle Kingdom is happening. And as of the time this podcast is coming out, it hasn't happened just yet. But we're good. Well, I'm not going to say we're good, because who knows? But I would imagine that it's going to be an amazing show. It always is an amazing show. I don't remember a time when Wrestle Kingdom was not an amazing show. But let's talk about some of the stuff that's happening. First of all, of course, the big match, the United States Championship match, Kenny Omega versus Chris Jericho, no disqualification match. I don't think that this will be... I think Chris Jericho is going to go on a run outside of WWE. You saw his t-shirt pop up in Hot Topic. He's doing this show for New Japan. Because he doesn't have to be a full-time schedule. He can keep touring with Fozzie. I think that in the coming months, Chris Jericho will be working for companies besides WWE, whether that's New Japan. I wouldn't be surprised if he pops up in Ring of Honor. He's working with Ring of Honor on this cruise thing that he's doing. I wouldn't be surprised at all if all this stuff, if Chris really decided, okay, he's probably not going to have a better WWE run than the last one he had with Kevin Owens. And that's not taking anything away from Chris Jericho. That's to say that that's one of the best runs that anybody's ever had. But when was the last time he had an amazing, successful run outside of WWE? Jericho's always looking to do something else. He's always looking to figure out what the next thing is, and I don't think this will be a one and done. I think that Chris Jericho is about to go on the tour of Jericho. Buy a ticket, man. I think that's what we'll see coming out of this. It's going to be a terrific match. I do think that Naito versus Okada for the heavyweight championship, for the IWGP championship, is the match that's going to steal the show. I think that Jericho Omega is going to bring people to the dance, but Okada Naito is going to steal the show. I think that both those guys have so much riding on this. They know there are more eyes on the show than ever before because of Jericho. Naito and Okada both know how much Kenny Omega's career benefited, and Okada's career benefited, from the series of Kenny Omega-Okada matches that happened in New Japan. And I think Naito, based on the journey that he's been on and the spot that he's at in his career, is going to do everything in his power to outshine those matches. And I think Okada's going to do that too. Okada doesn't want people to think that he's got one good match in him, and that's with Kenny Omega. Okada wants people to think that whoever he's in the ring with is going to be the match of the night. And so I think that Okada and Naito are going to do everything in their power to steal the show. But I also think they're going to try to steal the thunder that Okada and Omega created last year. And that is the best when wrestling is at its best, when people are competing on this level. New Japan storytelling, they've done a really good job this year. And there are a couple people who have done it independently. But New Japan has released some videos on YouTube and stuff explaining the stories of these matches. And Naito just has such a great story because it's real life. It's this combination of when wrestling is at its best, of wrestling and real life. Naito was kind of like Roman Reigns in the sense that he was given the world, but the fans didn't react to him the way I think New Japan thought. And maybe his performance wasn't as good as maybe New Japan thought. But when the fans didn't react to him, New Japan management did not do what WWE did. New Japan management acknowledged the fans and kind of cast them away. And that created the Ingobernales, Tranquilo Naito that we know today. And I just think it's his time. He's my favorite performer in all of New Japan. And I think Naito and Okada are going to execute on the fact that there are so many eyes on them that they're going to make sure that they're the ones that people are talking about coming out of this thing. So you got those two big matches. And then you got, Jay White versus Tanahashi. You've got Marty Scurll defending the Junior Heavyweight Championship in a 4-way against Will Ospreay, Takahashi, and Kushida. A hair versus hair match between Minoru Suzuki versus Goto. Of course, this is one that I think everybody's looking forward to, and a match that I think is going to attempt to steal the show, but might not be successful. Ibushi versus Cody Rhodes. And it's kind of surprising. Cody Rhodes finds himself in the middle of this card. As much as we're used to seeing Cody Rhodes in the main event here in the States at Ring of Honor, middle of the card. So there's a lot going on. And of course, you got just a straight tag team match between Roppongi 3K and the Young Bucks for the Junior Tag Team Championship, which, again, you got all of those guys. All of them are going to try to steal the show. The Bucks, Roppongi, that's what makes New Japan so great, that everybody tries to steal the show. And I think that's what we're in for at Wrestle Kingdom this week. you'll probably, by the time you're listening to this, it's probably just finishing. I believe that it airs in the States, if you're watching it live, I think it's Thursday morning at 2 a.m. So this podcast is released to the world Thursday morning at 3 a.m. So if you listen to it as soon as it comes out, you can listen to it while you're watching Wrestle Kingdom. But if you listen to it during the day, like most people on the Thursday that it comes out, Wrestle Kingdom might have already happened. As I said earlier, if you think that I should cover Wrestle Kingdom, hit me up on Twitter or Facebook, notsam, and tell me that you need a bonus State of Wrestling to talk about what went down at Wrestle Kingdom, because I'm so anxious to see all of what I just covered this year, and I think that this has potential to be one of the better Wrestle Kingdom shows. But, you know, they do every year now. New Japan does not skimp on Wrestle Kingdom. That's one thing that they do not do. Lots of stuff we didn't talk about, of course. The Jason Jordan, Shelton Benjamin almost win. Refgate possibly returning. I would say so. I'd be pissed if I was Shelton Benjamin and Chad Gable. The fact that a ref's mistake caused the momentum shift to happen, because I think it did. But I think that it's good for Shelton Benjamin and Chad Gable, because we're looking at them now in the light of a contender for tag team champions. So I'm sure that story will continue, as all stories in the world of professional wrestling continue. We will be back next week here on Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast. Thank you all, and goodbye.
Thanks for listening. Follow at notsam on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And subscribe for free to listen every week to Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast.